So the future is really up in the air as it comes to of USA. But I pray that there will be some reflection on this instead of we got that done. Now we're good. Because it is a bit of chance that it happened at all. In his first tenure, USAID came up at the very end of his term, and it really wasn't there. To see it come up so quick and accelerated like this, it shocked a lot of people. But time will tell whether that shock is like my cancer treaties, which faded over time, or whether it will stick. And they'll say, look, we got to change things because there's this impression that we're being wasteful. That impression has to come, as you said. Actually, I reflect now on what you said about the American people. They have to care. Because if they don't care, their constituents, their elected representatives don't care. And in America, it's a unique place that participation is so low that if you got 10 people together and protested outside of a senator's office, something would happen. To get that kind of change that quick, it's very efficient, so it doesn't take a lot.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Yo, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first episode where we were looking into the global impact of USAID and, the current situation of USAID and how it is evolving by the day. So in this very episode, which is going to be the last on USAID, we're going to do scenario mapping of the events as have unfolded, and there are a number of scenarios we'll be talking about, but also just to look into how different administrations normally bring new perspectives to how development work and foreign aid as a foreign policy instrument and how they use it to achieve their objectives. So, Mr. Dimitar, so walk us through the different scenarios that could happen after the 90-day freeze.
Yeah. Well, we've all been watching very carefully, as you know. Staff are currently locked out, but I think yesterday there was another court order which the administration isn't listening to. So it's going ahead with whatever, taking down more signs or whatever, changing bathroom, whatever. But what it effectively does is to my knowledge, it allows USAID staff in Washington to go back into the office. So, and again, as far as I know, missions have been in the office since, right? There was a period 2 weeks ago on a Friday where it was to be their last day, right? No, it was on the 7th. So it was a week ago. So that was it. They're to be out of the office. And then within a month, the international staff would have to be out of the country unless they were going to pay for their own way.
Oh,
right. Yeah. So when that happened, I called my boss, my former boss. I said, hey, if you want to have a goodbye party, but you don't feel like having it, I'm happy to host for you. And he's like, whoa.
We're not going anywhere.
Right. It's too soon for goodbye parties, And so he told me that everything has been signed and whatnot. And paperwork is, as we discussed earlier, an important part. And so they ended up back in the office on Monday. So not USAID Washington, but the missions. And there's always been an independence from Washington headquarters and the missions.
And independent missions, yes.
Like there would be from an organization's headquarters and the field. There's a lot of leeway, but ultimately the money comes from there. So you have to ultimately pay that. And locally, your embassy outranks you. So those policies outrank. So as an example of a policy, we had to follow, according to the embassy's policies, that we couldn't go against any Uganda government policies. So this usually isn't a question. Of course, you don't want to upset the host government. But in the case of education, we worked with public schools. We didn't work with private schools, even if we thought there were great gains to be made, right?
By working with the private schools, yeah.
So it's never been like it's too bad we can't do that sort of thing. It's really just, that's how it's done, right? And so the policy now, I believe till the 21st, until that ruling that was made by the judge in Rhode Island ends, right? And then some other judge would have to pick it up. Again, anyone out there, feel free to comment. Or get on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've seen Elon Musk trying to say some judges should resign.
Oh, yes. Oh. But a lot of these judges were appointed by Trump during President Trump during his administration. Yeah,
his decisions, yes.
The question of whether it makes it to the Supreme Court, at the end of the day, every day that USAID is not able to work with its partners, because being in the office doesn't mean you can spend money. Those activities are stopped. The HIV medications are not being given. People are dying, right? I showed you some statistics, but they are very centralized on the number of staff, but not beneficiaries, probably because it's hard to count. But so in addition to the beneficiaries that are hurt, and I don't think it does the Democrats any favors by not focusing on those beneficiaries. Most Americans don't know what USAID is. So most senators and congressmen are not going to stick their necks out if their constituents don't even care or might even believe that the government's correct.
It's not a big deal to them.
It's not in their self-interest.
Yeah, sure.
But I would say, that business as usual, and this is what business as usual is. It's you listen to your constituents.
People who have more sway. And you say here, because I think there are a couple of scenarios you had built, that that the responsibility you say it has is now going to be a burden, which is on the state, state infrastructure.
Technically, and as we discussed during the break, or maybe in the previous session, this was attempted under Hillary Clinton. So this isn't a new concept. And I think what Hillary did probably back then was to lay the groundwork for what would become. But I don't think that's being, if you're going to really do that, you wouldn't rip that Band-Aid off so quick. You would let there be time for transition.
It would have to be gradual
and handover. And a lot of those people from USA would end up at state to lead those really critical programs. And so many people wouldn't be suffering as a result. But the other challenge with this is the longer USAID is out, the harder it is to start again. I mean, you can stop the machine right away. There were people about to inoculate a child against polio, and they stopped because they were told to stop. Most doctors, I think, probably would have kept going with a few of the children anyway. But so when you stop for that period of time, you have local organizations that cannot fund themselves, right? They have staff they have to take care of. What this showed us is how many medium and small businesses are unable to support themselves even for 2 weeks. Like they're laying off staff, and some of them will be closed by the end of this this ordeal.
Yeah,
because we say we have a phrase in the U.S., paycheck to paycheck. So you live paycheck to paycheck. You're just able to get from one paycheck to the next. So if any crisis happens, you're out of luck because you don't have any reserves. So these organizations, many of them for profit, don't have the reserves to keep staff on. So staff are leaving. Staff leave. You got to rehire them when USAID comes back online. So it's a lot more complicated than just turning a switch and having it come back online. And some of the scenarios we talked about bear that out. But so those are the twin dangers, of all this. Whether state can manage USAID, because after the last expat is on the plane, State Department takes a breath, and there's a line of people outside saying,
Every HIV clinic.
my association of farmers agreed to buy 1 billion in seeds because you agreed to double that investment
And
by 2
the
billion.
farmers
Where is that? Now, this is
invested
a
their
hypothetical case. This didn't happen, but I'm just to give you an idea. Your comment about patients showing up at the door is probably most likely as well.
There's a government program which used to exist. So you would kind of sign a contract like from a promissory perspective.
Yes.
So you put up nursery beds, millions of shillings.
Yeah.
Let's say like 10,000
Yeah.
USD or 200,000.
Sure.
And then government stops the program.
Yeah.
Which means you'll have all this tea which you cannot supply
Right.
to anyone.
And the governments usually come in last. They don't trust the people to put theirs in, so they're not going to come in with their investment until the others. So whoever was at the end of the line when that buzzer turned on last Friday or the Friday before, they're seeking compensation.
Compensation, yes. Because what happens is a judge who just, I saw a note, I think, early morning, trying to put an injunction on this whole stopping of you said. Does a judge in the United States have that power, or is it
a federal judge? And federal judges are all over the country. Why the Rhode Island judge was the one? I don't know how that works, but another judge could pick it up, or that finding is made permanent on the 21st, and therefore the administration would have to appeal it. Again, you'll need a legal expert for some of these questions, but these are the pivotal points. And another pivotal point that is not anything legally related, it's the budget, the U.S. budget, which every year is always a battle. You know, until the late hours, congressmen and women sleeping in their
still
offices.
haven't agreed on the numbers.
And they
What's the
won't
financial
until the
like?
last day, you know.
What's the financial year like? Still June?
Well, the fiscal year ends in September, right?
So it's September.
So it's from October to September. So our first quarter is after October. So October, November, December, then January, February, March, all the way up until again. So that's why the summer is usually very busy, because they're trying to push out all of these awards before the end of the fiscal year.
So my thoughts are that thought pattern is that now that we're getting into like a budget year and going to have like the I think 25, 26
it would be
budget
the
of the United
26,
States.
26, 27.
Yeah, I think we'll not have the resources you said has been having allocated.
I mean,
Congress.
the Republicans, if they say what they are saying, and a Republican congressman put forward legislation making it official, because there were complaints that the House makes the decision of whether U.S. aid comes or goes, not the president. So the executive orders that have been flying around under both administrations recently are really like promises to do things legally later.
Which means they could, as cabinet, take that law to Senate or Congress.
Right.
And
but that's
it becomes
not
official policy.
To follow the Band-Aid analogy, to follow the process. And some of this process is not even legal. I mean, it's not written down as a legal thing. Like you know, a lot of what the current president does is he breaks norms. Right,
not laws,
customary, and the gentlewomanly conduct of the House and the Senate. The first 100 days, right? It's typically thought of as the president's first 100 days. What can the president get done? Well, it's a custom that
to shake things
both
up.
parties don't. Yeah, the party that just won has a robust agenda. Now that party that candidate just won on the mandate of the people. So the people don't want to see the opposition party now messing with that president as they're trying to get their agenda across.
Forerunner, 100 days.
Let him for 100 days. Give the guy a chance, right? And Obama took advantage of his 100 days by pushing for health care, right? Obamacare. So the first 100 days of Trump's last term was to eliminate Obamacare. So Usually the previous government
Trump's-
leaves all those things alone and they move forward. So that's the question of if the Democrats take power next, would they just bring USAID back? And
Executive order. You say it is bad.
yeah, exactly.
I'll give him
Do
good
it
more
just
money.
the same way. But yeah,
Oh,
so it's these
goodness.
norms that are the tactic of the government. You know, the Gulf of America, come on, right? And abusing of that executive order because there are no rules around it. I've looked. Like, what's the balance?
So there's like still an internal debate on whether the president even has the power to do that.
That's the question, because in the past it was like there's an executive order to send relief materials to North Carolina because of the hurricane. You know, that's how it was used, not in this way, not to.
The infrastructure works differently.
Yeah, so I would think if I could ever envision another Trump presidency after the first, I would put things in place to maybe define his tool of choice, right?
Yes,
The executive order,
because
but
maybe
none of that
back
was.
to what we discussed in the first episode. So JFK brings
Yes.
it up. Does
Yeah.
it become law, or does it become
Yes.
a government? It's law.
It's a government. It become to be an agency. It has to be established by Congress and voted on, and what. I don't know
So
that
if they were to
DOJ,
remove it, they would need to get like a bill to the Senate or Congress
which has been
and
submitted,
rationalize government.
and there'd have to be a vote. And I think those procedures are not being done because they slow down the momentum. So what the Democrats are doing, and I think I shared with you, it's not that they're not doing anything. That's the impression, is that they're just laying down. It's a strategic patience, right? And instead of being more aggressive and out front, they are doing things behind the scenes and waiting to see what he's really after, because all of this bluster when he started, bathrooms and the Gulf of America and Greenland,
Immigration.
all of this, they were sort of a smokescreen for what he was really going for.
It looks like theater.
I mean,
Too good to be true.
Exactly. If the first department to go after was the Department of Defense, I don't think he would be in this position. But USAID, nobody knows about it. You can maybe get that under,
it's
and
the
then you get
1%.
momentum. Right. Not even. Is it even 1%?
Must be less than 1%.
I think, yeah. Comparatively to our GDP, we don't have as high as others. But we are the largest donor globally. So, and that's what I teach. I share this knowledge with our community at Localization for Development, that don't listen USAID if you're on. If you can get funding from anywhere else before you go to USAID, do that. And that isn't any. I'm not throwing shade at USAID. Oh, that's a clever rhyme. It's simply that there's a lot of burdens, and it's better to work with organizations that maybe don't have those challenges.
Broader burdens, yes.
Yeah, and it's financial, and it's really hard to make USAID activities work. I know from being chief of party in the field how hard it is to get some of these, because you design something to win, and then you got to make those promises true. It's tough. So
it's a whole different.
It's a whole different
terrain
ballgame.
and approach.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Dimitra, if you were to fix one thing about USAID, assuming you become the global head of USAID.
Oh, are there rumors that's the case?
Let's run the thought experiment. Assuming, what is
Okay.
that one thing that is hurting most about USAID that you would want to fix?
I wasn't prepared for this question. One thing, I guess, it would have to be something that really was at the root of everything. And there's no silver bullet for any of these things. But Moses Asuba, right, and his comment about the development industrial complex, which are the only groups that are actually filing lawsuit against the government, because the government hasn't paid. The lawsuit isn't bring USAID back. It's pay us for what you promised, just like all these others.
Yeah.
So, so the one thing would have to do with that. It would have to do with balancing that power, so that we can actually achieve localization. Because to award a contract for localization to an American organization to implement doesn't make any sense, because it's not in that organization's self-interest to see that actually happen. Now, if you've never been in a country, say you're an organization, you've never had a footprint in Uganda, pretty soon after you hire your staff and you have your first few team building meetings and you grow fond of them and you realize I'm supporting these families and their kids and all of this, it doesn't matter what your promise was that you would effectively be put out of business.
Put yourself out of work.
When that 4 years is up, you're going to ask for more money.
More 4 years. More 4 years. More 4
and for
years.
these limited individuals, at the expense of the greater. So it's human nature we're dealing with. And I think recognizing that as a fault in the system, that we can't have U.S. groups evaluating ourselves, right? And to create that safe space, we need to have, and not just evaluation, but implementing, right? We can't just have internationals delivering everything. One, it will never get to sustainability. And two, USAID will have to come to terms with risk, right? Nobody's going to jail if $5,000 is misappropriated, but usually it's misappropriated because they're only given 10,000 or 10% of the budget to work with, but they still have contingencies. And nobody told them that USAID likes to go back and forth on quarterlies for 2 months, right? So all these unknown unknowns come up. So I don't say this happens. I have no idea, but not all corruption is necessarily to pad one's pocket and buy a car, in a swimming pool. It's to keep an organization alive. The congresswoman,
Are there grants that even give less than 10%?
No, that's the standard.
Bare minimum.
Yeah, but on top of that, a lot of local organizations will try to undercut because they don't think they can, right? Let me tell you, if a local organization, just in the cost volume, and they're evaluated separately, they would win just on that. But if they had a technical and they had past performance and evidence of a system of how they're going to operate, which are the tools that we want to prepare them for, then they don't have to spend all that time and they don't have to worry. As a proposal writer, I'm told what keeps, try to answer the question, what keeps USAID up at night in X country, in X subject matter?
Can you solve it for them?
And you solve it for them. So what keeps them up is anxiety. Right? How do you reduce whether that money could be right? So USAID would spend $250,000 just so that 10,000 isn't misappropriated. Mm-hmm. So, well, maybe I'd change my mind on what I would do. Is to reduce. There was a law years ago called the Paperwork Reduction Act, and that helped a little. But I think to shift to something that reduces all those levels of paperwork that are no longer needed. Because when you add a new regulation, you should take one out. It should be a one-for-one thing. And that would probably help with the bureaucracy part. But again, it's these rules that give people comfort, that something isn't going to surprise them. And people acting in their own self-interest makes an international organization hard to run.
I totally get where you're coming from. So I used to do some debating actively. Mm-hmm. So there was this. So did I. There was this. Used to debate. Oh, yeah. So there was a common argument we used to run. If you're let's say debating, should aid not be given to authoritarian regimes? The idea was because the aid is not existing, then citizens are going to feel the vacuum and want to push back. Yeah. In this case, in the U.S., the Democrats are quiet. I'm sure a pushback is going to come through with how these things were done.
Right.
Yeah. How is the American public likely to respond to this very situation?
Well, I can tell you how they're
in the course of the day. Right now, I
I've
think
never
they're just
seen
enjoying the
so
theater.
many. Yeah, I've never seen USAID on so many newscasts coming out of reporters' mouths. I would never have heard USAID ever come out. So if this was a scheme to get the name recognition of USAID up, and
Perfect.
Trump plans to give it all back,
it's
it's brilliant. It's brilliant. USAID name recognition at an all-time high. But obviously that's a dream. But American people don't tend, just like everyone, American people are very much the same as every other constituency. In fact, I'd say developing democracies have more educated voters because they have more investment in those things that change.
Oh.
An American candidate running for office is going to promise a bunch of stuff and then not deliver. But there's rarely things that really impact. In developing countries, you can really see it. The change in improving the roads or making water available.
Yeah, the change is real.
It's real. You can feel it. So there's turnout in America is abysmal for elections, like 50%, 60%.
You seem to be making the argument that if there is anyone who's going to kind of protest hard, it's not going to be the American citizen.
No.
It's likely to be either the citizen in the recipient country who puts pressure on the government, and that pressure maybe translates into diplomatic pressure on the U.S.
That's what we talked about last session. Your comment about the State Department having this burden.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what, somebody's got to take this on. And the dependency, you can look at it in different ways. Obviously anything you give for free becomes a dependency, right? But it also is never appreciated for its full value. So I had this discussion with some colleagues at the hub where I work. Should we offer this public speaking activity for free, or should we charge for it?
For a cost, yeah.
Right. And the decision was ultimately to charge a fee, even though the people wouldn't really have a lot of money that were coming. And that was our, we can do it for free or we can do it for a cost. The decision to do it for a cost was strategic. It's not to have money. It's to make sure the
maintain
people that come.
Maintain the value of
absolutely.
the product. I get you.
Putting
the price on something.
My workshops are less attended because they're free. And when you don't pay for something, it's okay not to show up one day. It is free anyway, right? And someone doing the same thing but charging $100, you guarantee they'll be there every day. They won't be using their cell phone, and they're going to pay attention. So we have these debates because you don't want to charge people who don't have money, but people have to have some what we call skin in the game. They have to have some investment. So if that's paying for a boda to get to the workshop and paying for their own lunch while they're there, maybe that's all the investment that's needed. You don't need to charge. But finding that right sweet spot is important. With the Americans, voting, it's also a reason that Trump was elected in the first place. They didn't see anything from the Democrats or the Republicans, but a bunch of promises, and boring promises at that.
Yeah,
right?
From the Democrats, yeah.
And so if the Democrats aren't delivering and the Republicans aren't delivering and the whole thing is very boring, naturally someone can come along.
Says, I'm taking you to heaven.
And here are some very fun facts about my past life that you'll get to learn about. So part of it's that theater, and
you've been
you can't
into
discount
theater?
that. What's that? No, part of this, the enthusiasm for Trump is theater, and USAID can go, right? Because we don't know anything about what USAID does.
Oh, yeah.
And it can't track those long-term consequences of the power that USAID no longer has in these countries because it's lost aid, right? That's all too complex and untangible. So, but if this is allowed to go through, that momentum builds to where some agency that people really do care about is now able to be dismantled, and there's nothing they can do about it. So to the Democrats, that is my concern. Don't think about this as a small game, right? This is the most important part of the game right now.
Keeping quiet, watching.
Yeah, you've got to be more active and putting roadblocks up to because I can guarantee you that the incumbent and some other people in his circle are all in. If they don't get this through,
They know the
their
consequences.
momentum will die very quickly, and they'll be humiliated.
And Trump loves his numbers up.
Yeah.
He talks about
Exactly.
them often.
Exactly.
Maybe as we
So the self-interest isn't equal. And when that happens, my money is on where the self-interest is the highest.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
That's the most probable approximate impact. Okay, just to close it. So, as we did research ahead of this podcast, I got to learn that different administrations use USAID differently, right? And like you said, I think from the very beginning, from when JFK brought it about to George W. Bush, and for example, was quite big on global health, democracy, economic
he's
development.
PEPFAR.
He's on who
his
introduced
biggest
that
legacy is PEPFAR. Yeah,
that's good. With Obama now moving into ideas around self-sufficiency, food, feed the future. That must have been Michelle Obama. Okay. Feed the future.
And they made that movie too.
Oh,
that I talked
the
about
other
earlier.
one, right?
The Gift.
The Gift. The Gift.
Look for it on Netflix.
You should watch it.
On Netflix locally. If you have a VPN, you won't see it. Oh. But it's because it's a local film. But there's many movies called The Gift. Just look for one with the kid on the front, looking like he's leaving the city, depressed.
And you'll get to it.
And you'll get
it. With Trump, I think Trump made kind of attempts around.
Well, his policy was journey to self-reliance.
He continued Obama's monologue. Biden, I think, restructures it to go back on course.
Back to localization. Pure localization. Yeah.
And Trump is back. We don't know what.
We don't know what his.
We don't know what
new theme will be.
So what do you project the future to be? So let's say post-Trump, and you said, what
we're
do you
already
project
post-Trump
that to be? We're already in post-Trump.
We're already post-Trump? Okay.
Like in terms of running a thought experiment.
Well, if a president is only allowed 2 terms, and I think if there's any one thing people are confident in is that will stick. Things change all the time.
I hope they don't.
When
I'm not sure Trump, Trump for another 8 years.
Okay, we'll don't put that out there in the ethos. We'll cut that later, maybe. Yeah. But the potential for aid, you don't necessarily want USAID restarted on a knee jerk way. It needs to be, because you have the opportunity to build back better, right? And the instinct is to build back easier, right? Because to do this right is going to mean a change in the paradigm, like I'm talking about. You gave me one thing I would do. I quickly came up with 2, right? And there's many more, but it needs to be built with the local communities, right? It shouldn't be, if you're trying to help someone, they should be at the table, right?
They can't just receive
right. They can't just receive it, and their needs must be the first priority. So localization, really under Biden, really, and the administrator really got momentum. I mean, it encouraged me to come out of pocket and start this initiative because the money was going to follow this rhetoric. And as I said before, sure, new administration, they don't want to pick up the themes of the old, but journey to self-reliance, which was a Trump era, right? It didn't say anything different. The idea was to help countries to become self-reliant.
Yeah.
Same theme.
To depend less on...
But the wording was, tell us how advanced you are, and so we can determine when to cut off your aid. So that messaging came across as not as friendly. So
basic.
People waited it out.
As we close, what future do you see for USAID, maybe within 10 to 20 years? Do you see it expanding? Do you see it shrinking as we close?
Sure. It's really hard. That's a tough question and a good one. It's harder than the if you had one thing you would change question. But because we don't know the outcome of this. But I think, the standard holds true that it is only in times of great crisis and adversity that change happens, right? So I had cancer years ago, and boy, I came out of that once I was fine, and I didn't smoke, didn't drink, exercise about 6 months. And I kind of went back to the old habits. So, COVID, that was a big shock, but it really didn't change how we did things. In fact, many offices, they either were all back to the office 100% or they're all hybrid. But very few have experimented with, did I say hybrid?
Entire
Telework.
remote work, yeah.
Right. And then, but the hybrid model is we've learned enough to know that this type of meeting works, this type of meeting doesn't. But you have to change your thinking and your behavior to plan ahead for the next week. And when you're going to have your meetings that require creativity, okay, we got to have people in the office. And the meetings that are reporting, those can be telework. So still, that wasn't enough to change behavior. So this is another shock. The biggest one that I've seen. I mean, my career, I'm not necessarily in the business and haven't made any money from USAID in a while. But for many people, this is their entire career that's being taken away. And that's probably why the focus is on them instead of where it should be, which is on the people that they serve. So the future is really up in the air as it comes to of USAID. But I pray that there will be some reflection on this instead of we got that done, now we're good, because it is a bit of chance that it happened at all. In his first tenure, USAID came up at the very end of his term, and it really wasn't there. To see it come up so quick and accelerated like this, it shocked a lot of people. But time will tell whether that shock is like my cancer treaties, which faded over time, or whether it will stick. And they'll say, look, we got to change things because there's this impression that we're being wasteful. That impression has to come, as you said. Actually, I reflect now on what you said about the American people. They have to care. Because if they don't care, their constituents, their elected representatives don't care. And in America, it's a unique place that participation is so low that if you got 10 people together and protested outside of a senator's office, something would happen. To get that kind of change that quick, it's very efficient. So it doesn't take a lot. But people do have to care about helping other people abroad. And that's,
it's in the this American crisis spirit too.
Yeah, and exactly. And to bring in people from other countries. So we've now been pivoted to this black and white, red and blue structure. How we get out of that is probably not going to be a crisis like USAID. I think we're going to need aliens attacking us for us all to come together.
It's good to take some alien energy.
Once we defeat the aliens, we're back to where we started. People will split up.
Maybe another president will come and sign another executive order. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an exciting discussion, interesting discussion.
It was good having you, and I trust that the audience has learned quite a lot about the global footprint and nature of USAID and what reforms are necessary and what the future holds. Join us. Remember, we release a podcast every Monday, and we want you to be a part of our community for us to learn together, build Africa together, and be better together. See you next time.
Welcome to the Parliament Performance Tracker platform, a portal designed to empower Ugandan citizens with valuable insights into their parliament's performance and financial landscape. Some of the key highlights of this platform include the Parliament Legislators Report Card. Here, you find comprehensive information on the members of the Ugandan Parliament, from contact details and their biographies to their legislative performance, including bills sponsored, bill participation, term count, and the number of parliamentary committees they sit on. This section provides a transparent view on each legislator's contributions and activities. The Finance Tracker. This consists of two powerful tools, the Budget Tracker and the Debt Tracker. The Budget Tracker displays the current budget allocations of Uganda, allowing you to track how public resources are distributed across various sectors. But that's not all. There is also the Budget Simulator tool, enabling you to actively participate in the budgeting process by simulating your preferred resource allocations. While the Debt Tracker provides insights into Uganda's national debt standing, you will discover key metrics such as the debt per citizen, GDP per capita, and per capita income, along with the sources of these loans. Stay informed about Uganda's financial health and the implications for future generations. Insights. This is a platform where you can gain valuable knowledge about Parliament-related topics. Simply enter your queries and our system will fetch relevant articles and also provide AI-generated summaries, offering you a deeper understanding of the issues that matter to you. With its comprehensive tools, staying informed about Uganda's parliament and financial landscape has never been easier. Whether you're curious about your representative's performance, want to understand their budget allocations, or seek insights on parliament-related topics, this platform has you covered. Empower yourself with data and take an active role in shaping Uganda's future. Parliament Watch. Your eye on Parliament.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. For more podcasts, check out our Podbean and YouTube platforms. Thank you.